This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
The following is a paid program. The content is provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership are not responsible for the content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. And now, the host of the Team Martek Hour, Joe Martek.
Hey, are we on? What was this? You know, our real producer says nice things to us. She just doesn't point a finger at us. But today,
it's tough to say nice
we
things.
got the owner's husband in here. You know that Carol should be doing this show because she's much nicer than you.
I have been told that by several people.
You've been told that by most everybody, I think, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and she didn't get kicked out of the Franciscan Seminary.
No.
340-1590, 340-1590. This is the Team Martek Hour. And today we have two of the originals. We got Dan Woron, independent insurance agent, Joe Martek, financial advisor. And we have our regular guest member, retired prosecuting attorney from Wisconsin, Alan Love. And Ms. Victoria Loyd, as usual,
say she's coming.
Is on her way. But she gets sidetracked.
Famous last words.
Well, you know, in defense of Vic, clients call, and she just moves to the right. I mean, she does not say, okay, I'll see you next week. It's called, where are you now? Bam, and she goes. I mean, I don't care if it's 3 in the morning, that's her answer. She just does right now.
Does she work for a living?
Does she work? I got to tell you, she only has 2 speeds. She's either sleeping or working. She was, remember that State Farm thing with who you're talking to at 3 in the morning?
Oh, Jake
from State Farm.
Well, what you got on, Jake?
Victoria called Mike Paulus, who's another team member, by the way, Victoria Lloyd's team member, and in the middle of the night. And his wife said, who are you talking to? And he says, Victoria. She goes, really? This is not good.
Victoria from State Farm?
But she's that way. She thinks if she's awake working, you should be awake working. I mean, that's how her mind works. By the way, she just got voted either the top or in the top 3 RE/MAX agents in the state of Florida just this week.
That's quite an
Very
accomplishment.
cool.
Yeah. She was in the top 100. That was so funny a few years ago. She goes, Joe, I'm in the top 100 in Florida.
She brought a letter in here,
out of
right?
100,000. And I said, Vic, that's in the whole world. They said there's not 100,000 RE/MAX agents in Florida. But
we would hope not.
Oh, boy, that would be
There might have been at one time.
Yeah, right. Anyway, so back in '04, Dan Woron, independent insurance agent, Greg Fasula, attorney, Joe Martek, financial advisor, said, let's start doing radio shows. Why do we want to do those? Well, Dan has an area of expertise, Joe Martek has an area of expertise, and Greg Fasula had his. So we said, hey, we can answer questions and help people in areas that are not our expertise. And when you add up our combined experience, there's quite a few years. Now, Dan is like 38 or 40 years.
Well,
I love it when I do
something
that.
like that.
Something like that.
But you know, sometimes we talk about the combined experience that we have.
Yeah.
You know, my staff has that. My staff is very, very experienced. In fact, not to toot my horn, but to toot their horn.
Right.
As you know, we just came back from New York. We went up there for an awards ceremony where Nancy and I were lucky enough to go and represent the agency. But like we were number 24 out of 1,000.
Wow, big number.
Of multi-location agencies that are, have dozens of shops and have, some of them have hundreds of employees.
Yeah.
And we were able to compete with them in our little town.
Well,
come back when you reach the top 10.
I don't think that's going to happen because I have no desire to have multiple offices and franchises, because some of these have
if you were 30
80,
years,
90, 100 franchise
What a
locations.
nightmare that would
if
be.
you were 30 years old, you might want to work 8 to 7 days a week.
I tried that when
Yeah, I
I
know.
was 30 years
Yeah,
old,
right.
But I did almost all commercial,
Right.
and I really liked the business back then. But then, just like now, Andrew hit. Now we had this big storm coming up
Right,
to the
right,
Carolinas.
right.
It changed all of Florida property
Right.
insurance, and the companies said we don't want big property risks for a long time, and it just changed my mode of operation.
Now, can you write insurance now, even though it's way up there?
In our area, yes. In other words, they haven't closed down the area in South Florida.
What about North Florida?
Well, depends.
There's
I
a
haven't
line
seen
someplace.
anything. I haven't seen anything yet. All right. A lot of and as you know, flood insurance is different. All right. Flood insurance, if you go through the federal government, it takes 30 days from the time you buy it.
Ooh, that's
Doesn't
right.
go into
That's
effect
right.
for 30 days. But that being said, we do have some companies that if you write the homeowners insurance with them, some of them also offer flood insurance, and it goes into effect that day. All right, so there are some changes, just in every industry, things sort of like morph and change. So yes, that's available for some companies. Now, they won't write every home. They won't write really old homes. So if you can fit in that box and you want flood and home with the same company, it's a good value.
See, I can't even imagine, because they're talking about the storm really slowing down
Yep.
and becoming like Harvey.
Yep. 3 feet of rain some places.
Oh, my. Because with all the hills, I would imagine
Well,
that's
think of
going
that.
to be
Think of
even
that
more
low country, though. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yes,
thousands
yeah.
and thousands of acres, all in South Carolina, especially, and up
There'll be
into
some
north.
massive damage.
Oh man,
The rice will be gone.
Charleston floods on a regular basis with no reason. I mean, the tides come in downtown Charleston. You'll get streets with water on them just because they can. Now there could be Charleston could be underwater.
Wow.
I mean, downtown Charleston.
So, I mean, listen, all of us that live here on the coast, let's say from Texas up to Maine,
right.
we've all had our experiences
yeah.
with this. So,
Yeah.
as I've talked about before, there has been some discussion by some of the governors of creating some sort of a hurricane pool that covers the whole East Coast. But we've had
Good idea.
Well, we've had resistance from the Northeast. From Texas to Florida, Louisiana, the Carolinas, they are all sort of on board. But the further north you get, the more resistance you receive.
Was that before or after Sandy?
It was before.
Yeah, well, there you
wonder
go.
Now. If
So-
you pick up Jersey now, anyway.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that because, sometimes I perceive that the industry makes profit on disaster.
Yeah.
All right, I hate to say that, but disaster comes, and now we have to replenish our income. We have to replenish all the money that we spent. And there's times when I've seen insurance companies spend more money in 1 year than they've made since they've been in existence.
Yeah.
All right, so you have companies that buy reinsurance for catastrophe. But there has to be some good medium in there. You know what I'm saying?
I remember you guys last year talking about put all your important papers
Yeah.
in a watertight box.
Well,
we still have those at both the house and here. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, we say, create a hurricane box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, now hurricane box, if you're leaving, what I tell people is on the outside of the box, write down everything you want to take. If you have sentimental things, pictures, things that I cannot replace that are throughout your house, know where they are, go get them, put them in your car, get everything you wanted to take that you knew you wanted to take before the storm, and leave. Don't be in a panic trying to figure out, do it now.
Yeah.
You
In a
know?
panic, you forget everything.
Videotape your house.
Oh, yeah, big
Videotape
time.
all your stuff. Take pictures if you have just a camera on your phone. Do all that stuff.
The only good news is, and I hate to say this as good news, but and Dan, you've lived in Florida most of your life. I've been here for 40 years.
That's
Longer.
not most of your life.
It is, unfortunately.
Maybe the majority of your life.
Maybe a quarter of his life. Oh.
It's hell being 160. I'm telling you, still alive. Anyway, we have notice. You know, if you're living in California and an earthquake hits and sucks up your house and everything, guess what? You had 3 seconds.
No more payments.
No more payments, right?
Where's my insurance policy? And out there they have earthquake insurance.
Well,
Oh, yeah. big
Point
time.
is, the key, what I'm trying to say is that as bad as hurricanes are, and Dan, we've lived through many. You've lived through more than me. We've seen massive devastation. I was just down to Big Pine this year.
It's still recovering.
And it really hit it bad. But, you know, Floridians are quite resilient. These things come back. When I look at the Bahamas, and I've been over there many, many, many times, and the hurricanes hit and clean them out, and all of a sudden they're right back where they started. It didn't take them that long. It's just a cost of living in one area.
And if you want to live down in the Keys, Joe, there's some great bargains down there right now.
Yeah, Big Pine especially.
I'm just telling you. I mean,
sounds
there are people who say I'm done with this.
Done.
I'm getting out.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't blame him.
I remember when you could build your house past the dune line in the Carolinas. You had that big hurricane, and they said no more building past the dune line.
Right.
We're tired of you doing that.
Well, that's what you look at these oceanfront places all up and down the coast, and they always, of course, the media loves it, showing the water ripping right through them, but that's exactly what happens.
You think it's called a barrier island for a reason?
It's a reason. It used to be a barrier island. Well, I get a kick out of the local weather. I don't know if you noticed, but they're talking about beach erosion.
Yes.
So there is no erosion as of yesterday or today, but they were showing the rocks out on Hutchinson Island. Look at the erosion, which those rocks have been just like they always are.
By the House of Refuge.
By the House of Refuge. And these guys are looking for, and I look at these kids, they don't have a clue, you know, but they're trying to make up some news.
If you get good beach erosion, let's say from the Fort Pierce area north, I'll take my metal detector out there and I'll start looking. Because I'm telling you what, a good metal detector only goes down a few inches of sand. And if that stuff goes out, you never know
what's in there.
When the guys who do the real treasure hunting under the water, they blow the sand. They grit it and they blow it, and then they look and they blow it again because it can only detect so far.
Well, sometimes they suck it too.
Well, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And
then they sell it to the taxpayers to refurbish the beach.
Of course.
That the hurricane just washed out.
340-1590, 340-1590. So Dan Woron. Now let me toot Dan's horn a minute. Dan is usually pretty humble and modest. Usually, I'm good. I had to make sure I put that. You know, I had to use one of the attorney words.
Ask my wife. She'll tell you.
That's a Jesuit word.
Dan is the premier independent insurance agent on the Treasure Coast. What's that mean? Independent. Dan and I both grew up in the insurance industry as captive agents. I work for a company called Farmers, which is a good company. You work for Nationwide, which is a good company. But all of a sudden, at some point, you realize that captive companies change their rules every once in a while, and then they say, oh, we're not going to do this, or yesterday we did do this. So it's very hard to really service your client base with just one company. This is my opinion. So Dan became an independent insurance agent a few years ago, and today, under his umbrella, not all homeowners, not all cars, not all businesses, but roughly 100 different companies. Why is that important? Well, if one company falls out of favor, your agent can then say, okay, XYZ company fell out of favor. They don't like you anymore. Now we have ABC company, which is on a par with them, that'll give you the same coverage and a good deal. And you can move. And Dan, I've moved with you 2 or 3 times.
As your driving record got worse.
Well, that helps. His girl Barbie says, Joe, please, don't get any more tickets.
Hey. Why is there a boot on your car in the parking lot?
What I did now, cruise control has been my rule of life. If the speed limit is more than 35, I put the cruise control on. It's it's all kinds of devices. I have a nephew who had
a problem. So about every hour when he would drive, he'd have to blow into this tube to make sure he was okay. So he got permission to go to Detroit, and he said it was the funniest thing, me driving down the road, blowing in this tube every 30 minutes or so.
Please pulling him over, think he's doing dope.
That is so sick.
So then Greg Fasula, attorney, and this, when you say the word attorney, very often hairs start to stand up on the back of your neck because we think about these guys making a long dollar, not really working hard, which is not always true. But the key thing that we were looking at, when I talk to a new suspect or prospect, I talk wills and trusts. Now, wills and trusts are cart and horse. I feel that everybody should have one of these instruments because you never know when you're going to die, and we've all seen families fall apart when it comes to not having things taken care of properly. So what I would do when I met a new client or prospect, I'd say, hey, do you have such a thing? And they'd say no, and I'd go interview a local attorney, and the attorney was real nice to me, and I said, are you fairly priced? And he goes, oh, yeah, it depends on how much time I put in.
Depends on who I'm talking to.
I know, that's the word. So then I would take the client and meet him at the attorney's or go with him. And then the attorney all of a sudden became pretentious and arrogant and a know-it-all, and my poor client was all intimidated.
Do you think they do that because they think that's what the client expects?
Listen, I don't care why they do it. I don't like it.
No, I don't, you know.
So then what would happen is I'm guilt by association. I'm sitting there, and I'm the one that suggested this was a good guy. Then he comes up with a price that, in my, again, not too humble opinion, was 2 or 3 times more than should have been charged. So
was
then,
it gold Boston in the leather-bound case?
oh, yeah. Well, those gold books that you can't hardly lift that have 90 pounds of fluff and 3 ounces of meat. So I met Greg Fasula doing the same thing, take my client there, and immediately Greg was not arrogant, not pretentious, a good listener. Now, I'm telling you.
And you know, you really should be a good listener if you're doing the will and the trust to do it the way they want it.
You should be. That doesn't mean they are.
But you should be.
You should be. Then I found out, last but not least, he wasn't expensive. And I thought, holy mackerel. So
now I'm going to come to his defense.
I know.
He's going to say it depends on how complicated it's going to be.
Well, attorneys get paid.
And that's true.
That's with everything.
But attorneys get paid by the hour, normally, you know. But what they also do is, let's say a guy says, I have a minimum that I'm going to charge everybody for a will or a trust. Now, I don't care if I put 10 minutes in or if I give it the boilerplate or if I put 10 hours.
But you know, Joe, that's not true just with lawyers. I know insurance people who say, if we can't generate X dollars of commission out of the sale, we're not going to do it.
Well, listen, in my business, financial advisors, there's some that won't take anybody with less than $500,000. Some that won't take anybody less than $250,000. In fact, I have one of my main competitors, which I love dearly, said, you have an estate worth less than $250, leave us. Go someplace else. Well, okay, good. I'll take it.
They were actually told that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there are people like that. I hear it all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
They have a minimum.
A minimum I'm going to work for. Now, my theory is this. If you're a small little contractor, and let's say it's a $500 premium, so I'm going to make $50.
Right.
For some agencies, it's like, I'm not wasting my time.
For $50.
My theory is I want to take that account, and I hope that they grow. And now they're bigger. Now they need a truck insurance. Now they need workers' comp. Now they need, and I'm the one who's been taking care of them all these years. Now that other guy who didn't have the time of day for them, he'll want them.
Now he does.
And I hope we have enough loyalty where they won't leave.
Well, here comes the next thing, what you just said. Loyalty also means referral business. Vic, if it wasn't for referral business, you'd be out of business.
That's true. I have a great referral business.
Well,
and it's such a compliment when I get a referral business.
Absolutely.
They call you. I was just talking to a client of mine that we sold at the Fountains. That was in 1987.
Yeah. Well, you know what happens is, and that's how all of us build, quote, our book of business, is by doing the job, doing the right job for people. And if people are happy with you, they refer other people.
Absolutely.
You know, people say, hey, who am I? And how many times, probably regularly, you hear somebody say, do you know a good realtor? Or do you know a good insurance man? Or do you know a good financial guy?
I say, yes, I do.
It's funny how they should ask that.
Yeah, but it's funny when, sometimes you refer somebody like you're saying, like a worker.
Yeah.
And they really did a great job before, but then they're so busy and then they don't call back. And all I get these calls, well, Victoria, I've already left 3 messages and they haven't gotten, and it's like, oh, please, just answer the people.
See, now there becomes the guilt by association. What Dan does when he refers somebody, he calls back his client. His customer and says, did they get a hold of you?
And then I'll call and say, hey.
And I've said this on the radio, too. I said, now we take your name and number, and we've got 10 calls today. Listen, I'm not perfect. Last time I walked on water, it was frozen. If by chance we don't get back to you within the next couple of days, please call me and bug me. I mean, honestly, I mean that 100%.
And things can happen, Joe. I mean, right after the holiday for Labor Day, we have these off-premises servers that we use because we want to be protected from hurricanes.
Right.
Well, it had problems.
Yep.
And So now we're having to do everything on a piece of paper, wait till it gets up, which took 3 days, then go back and do it, and then we got to go back in and enter everything. I mean, there are things sometimes outside of your control. If I knew when it was going to be fixed, I'd say, oh, yeah, we'll get to you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Well, Dan, I just got a call from somebody that I referred to. This was years ago before, and he said, Victoria, it was time for renewal for my homeowner's insurance. And they didn't even call me. And it lapsed on me. He paid cash for the home years ago. But this is a problem. So maybe it happened then. Would that be something with your server
it could.
maybe this company didn't
If
call
it-
them
They
because
send in the mail. They send a renewal.
They don't call you.
okay.
They send you a bill.
Yeah.
So
They-
maybe that bill
they-
never got out.
They send you
It's
a
possible.
reminder of the bill, and then they send you a cancellation.
Three
So
times.
If 3 times you don't respond, they're going to assume that you don't want it.
So that could have been a situation too, but they're going to be calling you. They're coming. They're in Canada right now, and they're coming. And I told them about you. And as soon as they come, they're going to switch over, and it's due in January. So I guess that was the time period.
I get a kick out of this. I've got certain clients that never open their mail. Never,
Well,
ever.
let's
But
face
one
it.
time they do.
Yeah.
They get a check every month. If the
If-
check is one day late,
They
I
call.
get a phone call.
It's amazing. And I love that we're on this thing that we're not all perfect, because I just had a client recently, and it was during the holiday also, when we just had the long holiday, and my husband said, we need to go to Canada, and we went for a couple of days. But that person got, even though we've been working together for so long, because I wasn't available that one time, she sends me this long text how disappointed she is with me.
Yeah.
But we're human. We are human.
Wait a
and-
minute. You never told me you were human.
well, I'm a human being.
Hey, speaking of Ms. Victoria Loyd, Remax of Stewart, hottest realtor alive.
Well, I am in the top 100, yes.
Okay, she
See, I'm
emailed
in
me.
the top
How many
100.
now? 100 again?
Well, I'm in the top 100, but I don't know how many 100,000s there are.
Let me just tell you, if you're in the top 100 and they send you that letter out, that's out of entire population of all Remax agents all over the globe.
And it probably is. Then,
I know
maybe.
it is.
Okay.
Now Vicky's pretty humble. Last time she got this, she goes, Joe, I'm in the top 100 out of
I thought
100,000
Florida.
agents just in Florida. And I said, Vic, there are not 100,000
I
agents
say in the state
Florida.
of Florida, so I might
There
be
might have
making
been
a
at one
mistake.
time.
I don't know.
That's in the entire globe, all the Remax agents.
I
But
didn't
that's-
even know it. It was kind of cute because I'm getting all these congratulations
Yeah.
coming at me. And that's the thing with me is I don't look at that. People say, well, how much money are you going to make off that deal? I go, I don't know. I really don't. I honestly
No,
don't.
the key is that-
I do it because I'm working and helping somebody.
well,
I don't look at it
Dan
like
and I
that.
were, just before you got here, we were talking about some of our competitors. They won't take a client unless it earns them a certain amount of money.
Right.
Right? Whether it's in insurance, investments, like a realtor. Oh, your house is worth less than $500,000. No, I only deal with $500,000 and up.
And some realtors do.
And
Yes,
some do
oh,
that.
I know.
Or a million or
Well,
so.
million
no,
and
the
up.
point, because there are areas of expertise that some people
I
do.
only deal in 5 million.
With Grey Poupon.
Hey, me, I like single wide trailers. you know.
I just like the car that you're in with the gray poupon.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Anyway, 340-1590, 340-1590. And we got a couple of other members, not only Greg Fasula that's not here today, but Mike Paulus, mortgage broker, who works hand in glove with Victoria. And what Mike's been able to do for people is just phenomenal. One, within 15 minutes, you'll know where you stand with Mike. You don't have to wait 2-3 weeks like if you walk into a bank and make an application. He'll tell you right now what you have or what you cannot do or how long it's going to take you to clean up. In other words, let's say you have a credit score of 500, and the 500 will not get you a mortgage. And you need to get up to 550 or 560 or 570. And Mike will say, well, here's what you need to do to get that up there so we can qualify you for a mortgage.
And then you need to tell them why, because this is what they don't understand. Well, I'm going to go to my local bank. Well, if you go to that local bank, they're just going to deny you immediately.
That's it.
That's
Absolutely.
it. They're not going to tell you how to
What you need to do to get help.
it there.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say, well, why do I need to go to a mortgage broker? Well, you're going to somebody that's there to help you. You're
yeah,
going there for
well,
the
key-
advice.
And it costs no more. In fact, very
Nothing.
often it costs less.
That's
Yeah,
right, because they
yeah.
shop it.
And it's usually a much faster response.
But they don't think that, you see. This is what we think. That's why we talk about investments.
Oh, yeah.
Why do we need a financial planner or somebody to do our investments?
Right.
I'll go to the bank, I'll put in the savings account, which gets you what?
Well, you get a 0.5%,
they-
1%, maybe even 2 now.
About
Things
2.
are going up.
And they don't understand it. That's the
I have a couple of circumstances I want to talk about. I've got one particular person that's called me a few times, and I'm working with them and have helped them quite a bit. And it's a subject that doesn't come up every day. But speaking of Mike, we either have Mike Paulus or we have Mike, our faithful listener, and I'm hoping this thing is working. Mike, it's Joe Martek. You're on the radio.
Thank you. Good morning to everyone.
Good morning, Mike.
I'm
Hi.
calling with a question today. I think it'll tie in with today's subject. I'm wondering if anyone can explain to me why a long-standing successful company like Nike would want to hire an unemployable,
Yes.
un-American, divisive, anti-law enforcement, anti-police troublemaker who's a has-been to represent their brand and sell their product.
You know, we had this conversation more than once lately, you could imagine, because you're talking to
He's
the
a
choir.
good guy.
Yeah, he's a good guy, right?
Sure he is.
He is.
He's also making $7 million a year from
No,
that.
wait a minute. His commercial says sometimes you have to sacrifice.
He's not sacrificing a thing.
We
He's-
know that.
He's still under contract
Well,
to Nike.
here's what I was talking to a guy, Mike, that makes about $750,000 a year, and he was trying to do business with me, and he's trying to be diplomatic, and I just said, what do you think about this situation? And he said, I've got to believe that Nike, the big company that they are, and they are a monster company, had their internal people say, we're going to lose X, but we may gain Y. Now, Nike's big customer base is under 45 years of age, and the dominant group is in that 25-year age group and down.
And
which
everything that says NFL, Nike makes.
Nike makes it. So,
or IRSC.
or
They make all of our stuff.
but it goes on and on and on.
And
but
Nike's
the-
profits, by the way,
But
since that commercial,
And
up 30%.
we are now giving Nike airtime.
Yeah. Oh,
For free.
They say billions of dollars that this, generate. The key thing, Mike, it's business. I have given up watching professional football. I'm done with it. I'm just done with it. I'm not going to turn it on. I'm not going to listen to it. I don't care about scores. I don't care about anything. The key is this. The young people, if you might remember this, some of them are liberals. Can you imagine that?
But some of those people who propose
right.
that don't have much spendable income, Joe.
Well, but Nike seems to, but it's still.
They love to tweak you. And they've done that for 40 years.
Yeah.
If I had young children still at my home, and let's say my son said, "Oh, Dad, I really want this new pair of Nikes," he wouldn't get them.
No. Now, what about your grandkids?
Now, if my son, who now is old enough to buy his own stuff, if he wants to go buy them now, that's on him.
Right.
So he's a younger person. If he wants the Nike, you pay for it.
And I got a ton of
but
Nike.
But if
You got,
I
Is
gotta pay for it, I'm not buying it.
he likes Kaepernick?
No, but I haven't. Oh, that guy. I'm sorry.
Do you think they're willing to sacrifice the older buyers to try to build a younger?
I think they're rolling the dice, Mike, and they're
No.
going to
Yeah,
wait and see
yeah.
what
They
happens.
could not care less about us.
Yeah.
The older
If
people.
you're over 45,
That's,
forget it.
That's
with
the
Nike.
number, right? That's the number that they
No,
were using.
it is.
Well, they said 45% is under 25 years of age.
Well, and 80% of their business is in Europe.
Uh-huh.
So they really couldn't care less about it.
And if
the
they
US.
wanted to do
But
that,
they just got, $50 billion worth of free advertising?
I imagine. And listen, I have nothing against their advertising campaign.
Right.
I just think the face of it should have been probably someone that I think perhaps sacrificed more.
Well, the word.
Agreed.
I was listening to, I forget if it's one of the governors of the southern states talking about sacrifice and about somebody that flew a helicopter with 12 dead bodies that came out of Vietnam. He said, I want to talk about sacrifice. And, and Mike, that's where we all are here. We just have an awfully hard time abiding by what is happening. But what are we going to do about it except complain about it, which we're doing now?
Well, no, you do more than that.
I'm not buying
Your
Nike.
complaint is with, I'm not buying the purchase. I'm not buying that. So you do have some control. What's out of your control is what your neighbor buys.
Yeah, exactly.
You can only control what you buy.
Have you seen the Nike joke that's going around now? I returned my Nikes to Dick's Sporting Goods, and the guy asked why. He said, because they hurt when I stand up for the anthem.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh,
That's a good one.
yeah,
That's a good one.
great one.
Well, Mike, we're all on the same
You
page.
could use them for skeet shooting.
Yeah. You know, there was a lot of burning, but that all went by the wayside pretty fast. You know, normally, Mike, I think you know, us conservatives are not very demonstrative. We don't get together and have rallies and burn stuff and do things. Normally, it's the other side of the aisle that does all of the exciting things. So
It just bothered me when there's so many good people with positive positioning and appearance in society, the view of them that could have done it so much better. It's just such a slap in the face.
Yeah,
The logic.
it is a slap in the
I
face. But
can't
hey, you know,
understand these things.
look
Last week I couldn't even call you all. I was so choked up after having to gag down a lot of bad news.
Well, you need to do what I consider the responsible thing, and that is, A, you got to send a letter to Mr. Knight and say, hey, I'm not buying your product, and here's the reason why. You need to not buy their product, and anybody who has sponsorship on NFL programs, you need to let them know, hey, I am withholding my right to not spend my money on your product.
well, I do know that
Come on, Dan.
NFL Sunday night.
That's our lifeblood here at this station.
Don't.
No,
yeah,
whoops.
but you don't. You do professional games on the radio.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
But the only power Mike
communist,
has, the only power
We've been
Mike
called
has
that
is not
before.
to buy. That's his only power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the only power we've got. Hey, Mike, I got a couple more calls hanging. Glad to hear from you, my man. And you and I are on the same page. In fact, I got Bulldog here and Pat waiting, but I'm going to take Pat first before Bulldog because Bulldog's just laying around the
Pat's
house
been
anyway.
waiting.
We lost Pat again.
Did we lose Pat?
Yeah.
Well, guess what, Mike?
Bulldog moved up.
Did I lose you, Mike? Good. Okay, goodbye, Mike. Bulldog, you're on the radio.
You moved up the pecking order.
You moved up. You ran him off, Bulldog.
Hey, hi guys. Hey, I want to get onto a totally different subject, and I'm very glad that Miss Victoria Loyd is there.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Bulldog.
Hey, dear TJ, we'll call you. I just nagged him again.
Okay, great.
But that brings up a topic that you can share that we discussed briefly, but why it's not a smart idea to FSBO a house versus using a realtor.
Right, we were talking about that the other day. Bulldog and I were talking about it.
What is a FSBO?
For sale by owner.
Well, where have you been your whole life?
I don't know.
Hidden behind a microphone.
Yeah.
Close. What we do to educate station owners' husbands.
Well, you know what's interesting is they stopped using those words. You remember years ago, and it used to not say for sale, it used to say FSBO
Yeah.
on the sign, and I think a lot of people just lost track of that. But we were talking about the other day, and I said to Bulldog, I said, any for sale by owner that I've ever taken, the minimum over everything that they wanted, they made $4,000 more was the minimum.
Well,
the other was a lot more.
But that's one thing. It's the money, but talk about the potential for liability to the buyer buying a house from an owner.
Well, yeah, we were talking about that also.
To me, a realtor has all kinds of liability, all kinds of disclosures they have to come up with in order to stay licensed.
Such as what?
What I'm trying to say is, but the owner, hey, you know, the old saying, buyer beware.
Yes.
Talk about, that's exactly.
Well, the other thing is, though, and we talked about that, but that's all that sellers think about is the money that you're making, as we've talked before. You don't make money.
Yeah.
Dan doesn't. We just work for free. But the other thing is, but all the other people out there don't. But the other thing that's interesting about it is, we were talking about that too, is when you see a word that says for sale by owner, what do you think? It's less money. And a lot of these for sale by owners price these properties up there, and they're usually price them higher than what they really should be because they're not knowledgeable and they want to get the money. They get people that come in the house, and the one that I did, and he was a manager over at Cracker Barrel, and I had he said, every time he said, Victoria, you can't believe the showings I'm getting, and this one guy's been back 12 times. I said, well, show me the money, Joe. Where's the money?
Yeah, right.
So he said, if I don't get something by Monday, I'm going to do it. By Monday, I took the listing. By Wednesday, I had 4 contracts, okay? One of it was the people that came back 12 times, 12 times, which was the lowest of them all that didn't get it. We sold it to a nice young couple that were engaged, got married, now have children. It's a great house. And he got more money in his pocket and like you said, had less liability than anything.
You know, the key, Bulldog, is professionalism. And
Absolutely.
you know, there's no such thing as any one person knowing everything except wives. But, you know, luckily you and I aren't married, so we don't have to worry about that.
Well, I think the thing is, you know, also is that what I emphasized is that you run the comps in the area, and he says, well, I've looked at Zillow. That don't mean anything to me.
Oh, Zillow's not even accurate half the time.
Right. None of this is really accurate. And the comps in the area don't do it, but the appraisal does.
Absolutely.
And that's what tells you what your house is worth. And, you know, and the other thing is the timeliness of it. A lot of people say, oh, I'm just going to throw it in the market. It'll sell within, 15 days. Or no, it doesn't work like that, because realtors give you the exposure. You doing it by yourself, where are you going to advertise? I mean,
that's it. Exactly.
Yeah.
What do you got? Drive-by traffic. They don't care.
Yeah, we're international. You're all over the world when you list with us.
Of course.
I don't even know half the places it goes.
Hey, Bulldog. Good talking to you, my man. I hope it's not too windy up there in North Florida.
No, we haven't gotten anything. God bless the people in North Carolina. My sympathies to them. I can't say I'm glad it's not us, because I don't want it to be anybody.
Exactly. Listen, I got Pat finally holding on the line here again, my man. Call us back regularly.
Thanks, Bulldog.
Good talking to you. I can't wait for that good Macallan Scotch, remember?
Bye. I've got some.
Go to Pat.
Hey, Pat, it's Joe Martek. You're on the radio. Hey, Pat, are you there? No?
Nope, Pat's not there.
Lost Pat again? Pat's not a good waiter.
Wow. Wait a minute, let's try one more thing. Cliff uses his Hello. He's been listening on the radio.
There's the radio.
Yeah,
there's the ring.
About a
Here comes Pat.
We got
Here
a
comes
ring.
Pat.
Okay.
Pat's finally
Hey,
here.
Bulldog. Good talking to you, my man. Give Mary Beth my sympathy.
Bye.
Okay. First off, as far as the football player making all the money for whatever he wants to do, there is a big organization out there that's following this crap.
Yep.
And that's why Nike does it.
Well, look at I've always called it the golden rule. He who has the gold rules.
Makes the rules.
And
they
that's
make
Phil
make
Knight.
the rules, and it's business. And even though look, this is no different than us group here. 99% of us are conservative, and we're very much in behind our president. But there's people on the other side of the aisle that are 100% want to kill him. I mean, they would do anything to get rid of him.
It's amazing.
So, we have a hard time understanding people that don't understand what we feel is the correct thing to do for our country, and that we all love our country. Just any of us that have traveled outside of America and come back, it's such a revelation when you're gone for 2 weeks, any place outside of America, to come back. It's just hard to fathom what we take for granted. So, listen.
So, one other thing, and speaking of, I know it's a money show, but there's politics for a second here. Did I hear last week or so that Musk is going to back Nelson because of the Green River?
I didn't hear that he was going to back Nelson, but you know what he said was he was not backing.
He's not endorsing Scott.
He's not endorsing Scott.
Because Scott didn't sick the DEP on the Corps
river
of Engineers 8 years ago.
So what he's trying to do is pick up a few Democrats, I think.
Yeah, right. Right after the shooting, the gun shooting, the school.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Everybody got to get rid of their ARs. That's a government and police.
Yeah, it's I tell you, I'm voting for the guy because I have to.
That's my point.
Yeah. But Dan and I both have had some reservations just because of not what he's accomplished or what he's doing, but the methodology, I guess.
Yeah, but when whatever he said, where he's not going to back Scott, that's one thing that bothers me, because there's more at stake.
Absolutely.
Have you and you know, Pat, too, how many times did we see, quote, Republicans not backing our president?
Yes, I know.
And hey, I'm telling you what, I don't miss some of them at all.
Yep.
The key thing is we are having the most phenomenal success in probably our lifetime, and this could continue for another 6 years at least. And by then, I'm old enough I should be dead anyway. So.
Well, me too, but at the same time, we can't afford this.
Yep.
We can't afford it. That snowball's getting awful big on the other side.
I understand, my man. Well, hey, we're all on the same side of the team right here. We our only liberal member on the team is not here today, so we get to pick on him.
He's moderate.
He's a moderate.
Yeah. Okay.
We love him. Hey,
Take care.
You know what, Pat? I will tell you this: most liberals have good hearts. They're just not too bright.
Yeah. Well, I got a good heart, and I'm not too bright, but I got a good heart, and I know right from wrong, and I just wish it was that simple.
You and me both, my man. Thanks for calling in.
Thanks.
We look forward to hearing from you again.
Bye-bye.
340-1590, 340-1590. Isn't there a disclaimer that you put on this thing that whatever we say you have nothing to do with there?
You're
Oh, yes,
responsible
I think in
for
the beginning. don't
We
you?
for
are-
everything.
Yeah, they do that in the
Joe. You're
beginning.
responsible for everything.
This entire show is irrelevant. No. And it ain't our fault.
Ain't our fault, right?
I've been patiently waiting for some political commentary, and I have some today. And Joe, you missed an incredible human experience Sunday night when Aaron Rodgers, the quarterback of the Green Bay Packers, played the second half on 1.5 legs with a knee brace, and the Packers came back from a 20-point deficit at halftime to win the game. But that's not what I really want to talk about. There was an educational message in that game regarding the economy. And the educational message that I got out of it is the difference between socialism and capitalism. Socialism is
we're waiting here, Dan.
is mediocrity. Aaron Rodgers is now the highest paid player in the NFL, and because of that, he had the incentive to go out and try and play the game of his life, injured. But that's what capitalism breeds. That's why capitalism is so important. That's why this election coming up is so important.
So
Are you saying if I have a bad knee, I need to go vote still?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
If you have a bad knee, you have to do the best you can
That's
with
right.
what you have.
He was a fair quarterback against a mediocre team.
Oh, wait a minute.
But he made it look good.
Wait
Greg?
till you see the wait till you see
Greg?
Speedy leap over the desk here and strangle you.
Greg, at 12:07, I'll meet you in the parking lot.
Well, you make it 12:10. Speedy takes him a little longer to get out there all the way. Well, I was just going to say, but I know people that are capitalists and entrepreneurial types that have radio stations, and they're not motivated by money.
No.
That was my point.
My
Aaron
wife doesn't let
Rodgers-
me see any money. So
Aaron Rodgers makes enough money where he could have just said, no, my knee's hurting me, I'm not coming out for the second half.
or his agent.
Or his, yeah.
No.
But
Agent says, get out there.
Yes, sir.
Oh,
You
no,
can
no,
do
no. That's what's changed in all of sports. And I used to kid Rick Monday, my old broadcast partner with the Dodgers. And Rick's era, which was he stopped playing in early 80s, and was the last of what I would call the pure breed athlete. It was the same in the NFL. And if you walk into an NFL locker room, you've got players walking in with briefcases now. That never happened. Never happened. Do they talk about the game? No. They talk about investments.
Yeah.
That's where everything has changed, and your agent, depending on who he or she is, might tell you to say, you're not going back in that field. We're getting second opinions before this game's over. I mean, there's all sorts of weird stuff that...
Well, that piece of equipment that they have purchased, for lack of a better term, is very valuable, and they don't want to abuse it any more than they have to.
Well, and we were just talking about on Orthopedic Show just a little bit ago about how the new stadiums all have their own MRIs now.
Yeah.
So they're already outfitted for, immediate decisions, if you will.
Well, as I said, I hope the NFL goes not well this year. This is a terrible thing to say, but I mean it. That I'm looking for less and less viewership, except on PSL.
All but one or so.
And STU. We want them to listen, but don't watch it on TV.
Yeah.
How's that?
That's it. Boycott the television.
Listen to radio.
Listen to the Dolphins and Bucks on these stations.
All I'm trying to say is this: the thing with Kaepernick has really upset me, and it's just my personal opinion.
But don't you think that the team owners and the league truly have the power to say, we're not going to tolerate this?
Evidently,
Did they not have the power in basketball? They certainly did,
NBA
and they certainly
says
exercised
you cannot do what they do in the
exercised
NFL.
it.
Period.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
They could have that rule in the NFL.
Well, and it was the players' union that stopped it.
I know.
It wasn't the owners.
So whose name is on that check?
Yeah.
Not the player.
Well, the owners.
The owners. I control my check writing ability.
340-1593. We are a right-to-work state.
Yes, we are.
So we
and I'm a right to fire you.
That's
state.
my point. Yeah. But hey, the union up there, but they got rid of Kaepernick.
Sort of.
It's like a mutual.
Man, he took a giant raise in pay to not play football anymore.
Right.
And sacrifice.
And now he's a Nike employee.
So it wasn't so bad.
Yeah, boy,
he didn't sacrifice
he
that
hit a home
much.
run. Now he's not going to get hurt on the football field.
$7 million a year, and he
bad.
doesn't take any hits. I'll do that.
He's He's not in a flag draped casket. That's a sacrifice.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well,
that's a
fact.
sacrifice.
That's true. No.
340-1590, 340-1590. Just as a real quick, we may have another call coming and we'll take it. But I had an instance this week, or for the last couple weeks, where a family, 3 brothers, mother, will, houses, investments, and Dan, something that we take for granted that many people don't. If you have a life insurance contract, it has named beneficiaries.
Right.
It's got nothing to do what's in a will. The beneficiary that's written in a life insurance contract supersedes anything that's outside of that.
That's correct.
Quote, a named beneficiary in a annuity contract supersedes anything that's outside of that, a will or whatever. Third, if you have a retirement account, an IRA, they normally have named beneficiaries. Again, the outside will has nothing to do. It doesn't make any difference what the will says. It makes a difference what's written down in that contract. Now, here comes a new one. TOD, transfer on death. This is not an IRA. This is a regular account where
like
you can go to the bank.
Savings account or checking account?
Savings account, checking account. You put transfer on death on it. That means, Greg, you die, it automatically goes to your wife. You both get run over by a truck. You have an order where it goes. It doesn't have to go through the courts.
That's what my parents did.
But here comes the $64,000 question if it's done wrong. Let's say you have 3 children TOD, all to share equally, and one dies.
Would you not have it set up where it goes to their children, if they have children, or their estate?
That's per Sturpes.
Right.
Now, to their estate, if it doesn't have designations or contingent beneficiaries on that, it would then go to their estate. It doesn't go to the other members of the group unless it's designated.
So would that portion be probated?
It will be subject to probate for sure. So literally, there's where the will come in handy. So here's what happens.
Is it a will or are you talking trust?
Well, I'm not talking either. I'm talking your bank account. You go to the bank account and you say, hey, bank, I want a transfer on death agreement. I die. That money goes to somebody. Doesn't have to go through my will. Doesn't have to go through the courts. Doesn't have to go through anything. It's transfer on death, like a beneficiary. But if the person you name dies simultaneously with the same time you die, where does that money go? Goes to their estate. So that doesn't necessarily mean that's what you wanted. You may have wanted that share to go to the other members that you put on, your children. It needs to be designated, is my point.
That's true, too, if you die together or at the same time.
Well, they're always going to say one of them died first. They're not going to say it simultaneously.
Oh, come on.
And that's true. That's
They
true.
will not.
Is
Oh,
that
yeah,
like
yes.
giving birth to twins?
Pretty much.
Yeah,
One of them
like
comes
giving
first.
birth
Yeah,
to
one
twins.
always comes first. So that's
right.
the way it'll always work.
Well, they got to have some of it. But let's just say you forgot to say Mom died last year, and now she's got this thing, and we've never settled it or even tried to settle it. It's just sitting there. Then somebody else dies. Well, all of a sudden, the can of worms gets more.
What if you simply put that, and I don't know the name of the clause, but it basically says, if you contest it, you're out.
Yeah.
And they have that.
They do that. If you contest it, you're out. Well, then you hire an attorney to contest that phrase.
We're always learning something new every day. You know when people say you've been in business for 40 years or 20 years, we learn something new every day.
Of course.
It's amazing.
Well,
But I forget it the next day.
That phrase is pretty solid. One way you can contest it, though, is if it was maliciously put in there.
well, there's also the other word is called competence.
Yeah.
When I have this circumstance that came up when Mom did a will, or the brother did a will, left everything to a girlfriend, was he competent? Now, he might have been 80 years old when he did this thing, and I asked the biggest thing was, did you go to an attorney to have the will done? If it was not an attorney, could have been a paralegal, could have been the office supply store. The key was there might have been duress. Now we have a contested will, which is back into attorneys and courts, right?
Right.
I'm just thinking of the 80-year-old with the girlfriend. There's probably no duress there.
He's got
Well, you're trying to think their girlfriend is young.
She's
He didn't say
27.
that.
Oh.
He didn't say
They didn't
that.
say
You
that.
guys are
Well,
assuming it.
first of all, any 80-year-old
She might have
guy,
been older.
any 80-year-old guy that gets a woman older than him, he's really out to lunch.
But she might have been nice and in good shape.
That's dementia
we
set in.
know
Dementia
dementia's
set
there.
in.
He is not competent. There's no doubt about it.
Hey, there are
Now, if he
cougars.
got a 40-year-old, we know he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
340-1590, 340.
It's a shame. The show is now finally starting to get good, and we got less than a minute.
Listen,
You
in
can
case,
tell I got all these men here around me
in
today.
case you
can't
don't want, yeah,
Aren't
but
you
you're
thrilled?
You know,
Oh, I am. I
Vic,
really
you've been
am. I
dealing
love the
with-
battle
you-
forever.
and-
I'm Italian. I'm used
Listen,
to it.
You're one of the boys. You know that. That's always
course.
been. You know, when you're in business and do what you do, that's just the way it works.
Oh, I love it. Are you kidding me?
340-1590, 340-1590. No time left to call the station, but call the station anytime. They'll take your
Get
name
our
and number,
numbers.
and
We'll
we'll get a
help ya.
hold of you. 340-1590. How much time we got, Dad?
20 seconds.
20 seconds.
Wow. That's a
the
couple
world can be
burpees.
cured in 20
Give it to
seconds.
Al.
You know, what we can do is do a Nike commercial.
Well, no. Let's give a word of prayer to the people that are going to get hit
Absolutely.
by Florence. That
Man,
Thank
I got
you.
to say,
they don't suffer too much.
it's going to
Yes,
be,
please.
like you said.
Because we don't know where that's going or what it's going to do.
Well, I just know that low country is really
It
going to
always
take a
has
hit.
been.
It won't be low long.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Until next week, thanks. Bye.
You've been listening to the Team Martek Hour. The Team Martek Hour is a paid program. The content was provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership were not responsible for its content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. Tune in again next Wednesday at 11:05 for the Team Martek Hour here on WPSL 1590.